Welcome to another Threes and TDs, where today, once again, we are talking about the Carolina Panthers. What a free agency, man. What a free agency. Hell of a free agency. Am I allowed to say hell on YouTube? I don't know, but just a phenomenal free agency period. So many good things happen. Dan Morgan, you're the man. Dan Morgan, you're the man. And we can analyze it. We can talk about it. We can talk about everything. The signings, the cap, literally everything. But wow, Dan Morgan, you are the man. Today, we're going to talk about, hey, as I have my mic, today we're going to talk about some of the national media reaction. You guys know how I feel about Brett Kollman and EJ. Brett and EJ kind of talked about the Panthers. Now, this was actually before the Rashid signing. It was before the Nick Scott signing, which we still have to talk about Nick Scott. I don't think it's as bad as some other people think it is. But yeah, let's talk about it. So here's EJ and Brett Kollman talking about what they felt in terms of how the Panthers did. All right, here we go. So we're going to talk about it.
Super high impact players, in particular, Jalen Phillips, 4 years, $120 million AAV. I don't know what the exact contract structure is as far as cash flow and, how many quote unquote real years it is. What's the guarantees? When is it paid? I don't know all that information yet. It's a fresh contract. But that to me seemed like a very reasonable deal. I happen to be a big Jalen Phillips fan.
Once again, I think he might be the first guy that is saying that that's a reasonable deal, because a lot of the rhetoric has been that it's a huge overpay, which, by the way, and I've said this before, all of the edge rushers got overpaid, all of them. The edge, sometimes what happens in free agency is that the edge market, or sometimes, like a few years ago, was the wide receiver market. Sometimes the markets are just overpaid for.
He was the most consistently productive edge rusher in Philly last year. They only acquired him for a third-round pick. They let him walk. They're about to get a third-round comp pick back for him because of that. And I think he is immediately probably going to be the best Panthers edge rusher, assuming he stays healthy. And then Devin Lloyd, they also brought in at $15 million a year.
I mean, for sure. And I think this, more than anything, I think this, I shared some of my thoughts on Twitter about this. I think it helps Nick Scott. I think it helps Nick Scorton more than people think it does. Nick Scorton is a huge beneficiary of this, because now double teams are going to go to Phillips, and it allows him to do. I wouldn't be surprised 4 or 5 years from now if we say that Jalen Phillips signing does more for Nick Scott getting 8-9 sacks consistently,
which is less than I thought Devin Lloyd was going to get, considering where the linebacker market is right now. So I thought that was a value signing. It's 3 years, 45. So it's possible that he took a little bit of a discount in terms of AAV in order to make it a 3-year deal.
Yeah.
Because he, in 2 years, assuming the linebacker market jumps again, he can get back into it and kind of get the pay bump that he's angling for here. So I thought that was a smart signing. It kind of reminded me of the Nico Collins deal a couple of years ago in Houston, where Nico did a 3-year deal that was probably less money than Nico is worth. In fact, I know it's less money than Nico is worth. But Nico wanted to get back to the table quicker, knowing that a whole bunch of other receivers were going to be coming and getting paid. CD, Jefferson.
Brett's a big Texans guy, so this makes sense as to like why you're talking about this.
Jamar, like the receiver market, if JSN's about to get paid, the receiver market got pushed up so much that now that Nico, after this season, is going to be going to the table again because he did a shorter discount deal, he's going to make more money in the long run because the receiver market has moved so far. So now Nico Collins, when he goes to the table next year, is going to get like high 30s or 40, even if he has a strong year this year. So that's why I think Devin Lloyd's thinking here. It's like, okay, I'm not getting the market I want right now. Let's see where it's at in 2 years. I'll make more money.
And the way that, once again, maybe some people thought that Phillips was overpaid, I think Lloyd was underpaid. So I think it kind of averages out in the end. And once again, like I said, there are some position groups sometimes in free agency that make more, and there are some position groups sometimes in free agency that makes less. That's just how it works
in the long run. Either way, Carolina benefits. They get an immediate upgrade at linebacker, which is something I thought that they needed in the draft. They're just taking care of it right now. Their edge rush rotation last year was ranked 32 out of 32 teams as far as pressure rates. So they desperately needed help there. Had a couple rookies, Scorton in particular, I thought played well, but they were just bad as a unit. So this helps fix that. Kenny Pickett is they brought in as the backup. Luke Fortner they brought in to kind of round out the interior rotation, and then they brought back a few of their own guys: Rochelle Simmons, Moore, Caleb Evans. Again, not a as high a volume of guys that the Jets brought in, but the impact of just taking those needs off the board for them, I think, is huge.
And stretching.
I think once again, y'all know how I feel about Brett, and I'm sure somebody in the comments is going to be like, "You're just crushing on Brett." Look, I'll be honest. I'd love to do what Brett does for a living, to just kind of react to this kind of stuff when it comes to the Panthers or the NFL. So like he's a hero of mine, but like I think he is spot on that the impact. I don't know that the Panthers under Dan Morgan have had a free agency, a draft the year prior, and a free agency that have had such a good impact. And you could say, well, those players haven't even played yet. I understand there is some projection, but like once again, I think Dan Morgan and Carolina had a top 3 free agency this year. Check. I also think they had a top 3 draft. And so we're talking about the Panthers being talked about in a way that they have never been talked about. Hell, 3 years ago, the Panthers were being talked about like the Cleveland Browns. That's the way they were being talked about. And now we're talking about a competent organization under Dan Morgan, under Brandon Tillis, that are they're firing on all cylinders. This is phenomenal. Now, does this mean that the Panthers are going to go to the Super Bowl? No. The Panthers are very far away from being the quality of team like the Eagles or the Ravens. That's nobody is suggesting that, but good gracious, the trajectory is high. So I love it. I love what they did. I love what Brett said here, and I'll see you guys in the next one.